we talked about that Ahmose began ruling in the New Kingdom, and this started from 1550 to 1070. Remember, you're supposed to keep a timeline. So you need to start with today's timeline that titles with the New Kingdom. And as I explain, you write down the new dates or the new ideas and accomplishments so that you do not lose track of events. So, Hatshepsut was a queen who came to power in 1473. She only came in power, or she only started ruling, because her husband, the pharaoh, died. And the next successor to come in line, her young nephew, was too young to rule. But she faced a little problem, which is the title pharaoh was only reserved for a man. So she had to dress up in men's clothing, and she wore a fake beard to copy what is done by the male Egyptian kings or the pharaohs, or that people can allow her to rule. During her reign, Hatshepsut built magnificent kingdoms and restored old monuments. This is because she valued trade over going to war. The previous pharaohs wanted to expand their land and their territories and their reign, so they started going to war with the nearby areas. This destroyed most of the kingdoms and destroyed most of the land. She did not like the idea of going to war, but she valued trade instead. She made efforts to restore the trade relationships that were lost during the Hyksos invasion. So she made her sailors travel to ports in the Arabia and the east of Africa for exchange of goods or things that the Egyptians made, like beads, metal tools, and weapons, in exchange for gold, ivory, ebony wood, and incense that were gotten from these areas. Ivory is the white metal that they may not metal, it's the white mineral actually that they extract or get from the elephant tusk. Ebony wood is a type of wood that has a very black color, and it's not found in the area of the Mediterranean. And incense, they are smells or scents that are extracted from different flowers or other minerals. Where did they get the wood products? They traveled to Phoenicia, which is a region that is present day Lebanon, and it's located in the east of the Mediterranean Sea. The Phoenicians impacted the Egyptian civilization, and the vice versa. The Egyptian civilization also impacted the Phoenicians. During that time, the Phoenicians had already invented a system of an alphabet writing that influenced a lot of areas, including ancient Egypt. Egyptians traded wheat, paper, gold, copper, tin, and other tools to the Phoenicians in exchange for purple dye, wood, and furniture. This trade helped increase or deepen the relationships between Phoenicia and Egypt. Also, this trade made Egypt wealthier. With that money, Hatshepsut restored the old monuments and started building new ones. The Egyptian kingdom also developed ties with nations in the Mesopotamian region, which is the Babylonian, if you remember. This was the last empire to form in the Mesopotamian region. To maintain close ties or to maintain relationships, there had to be some goals or agreements between these two areas, the Babylonian and the Egyptian. These agreements stated that they should trade together for a certain period of time, share culture and ideas, and prohibit war so that they can expand and not destroy what they were building for a long time. And this what happened for the first time in history, which is the common goals or the agreements between two different nations only during the time or the reign of Hatshepsut. Now, when Hatshepsut died, that young nephew, Thutmose III, became old enough to rule as a pharaoh. Once he started ruling, he began the same idea as the previous pharaohs, which is expanding Egypt's control. He started expanding control north to the Euphrates River, which is near the Mesopotamian region, and south to Nubia, which is usually the result of the decline of the empire due to wars. Now, Egypt's army started to conquer a lot of areas. The empire, yes, grew wealthy, but there was a negative idea that started spreading, which was slavery. Slavery became more common, and Egypt started getting more minerals such as gold, copper, ivory, and other valued goods. They got these minerals or metals from the conquered people. During the New Kingdom, two pharaohs, Amenhotep the fifth, the sixth, and Tutankhamun would come to power, and their actions would set them apart from other Egyptian rulers in the history. So far during the New Kingdom, we have Ahmus, then we have Hatshepsut, then we have Thutmose III, then we have Amenhotep and Tutankhamun. Amenhotep came to power around 1370. He tried to change Egypt's religion, which was based upon the worship of many deities. Fearing the power of Egypt's priests, Amenhotep introduced the new religion of worshipping Aton, the sun god, as Egypt's only god. He also removed the priests who opposed this change and took their land. So before Amenhotep started ruling, people kind of worshipped very strong elite priests who were known as deities. When Amenhotep came, he did not like the idea of worshipping people in front of them in power, so he introduced the idea of Aton, the sun god, and he told the people that this is the only god to worship, and any priest or deity who opposed this change of idea were removed from power and were removed from the hierarchy of the Egyptian power. He also changed his name from Amenhotep to Akhenaton and moved the capital of Egypt to Akhenaton city, which is a city north of Thebes. Many Egyptians opposed the change in religion because they were not used to it and they continued to worship many deities. The priests resisted the loss of power, and the army leaders lost faith in Amenhotep's rule. So, because the priests, which were the second highest power, resisted him, and the rest of the Egyptians also resisted the change, along with the army leaders who made up the rest of the second highest hierarchy, this made 90% of the Egyptian empire against Akhenaton's rule. And this made him weak, and because he was weak and could not control his people nor his army, he lost a lot of lands to Western Asia. Now, Tutankhamun was the nephew of Akhenaton, who took over as a pharaoh at the age of 10 because Akhenaton wasn't strong enough and apparently the empire was losing a lot of land. So he was so young, but his rule was based on the advice of priests. Because he was ruled based on the advice of priests, the first thing that he did when he started ruling is to restore the tradition of polytheism, which is believing in many gods. King Tut died unexpectedly after ruling for 9 years at the age of 19. His tomb was discovered in 1922. It was perfectly preserved and he was in a very good condition, and he was the only tomb to be found complete unrobbed by thieves. During the 1200s, the pharaohs coming next in line worked so hard to restore the Egyptian greatness. Ramses II ruled after King Tut. He ruled from 1279 to 1213. He conquered the region of Canaan, which is present day Syria and Lebanon, and he fought with the Hittites. He had many new temples built throughout Egypt. One of the most famous was a temple in Thebes known as the Karnak. The temples were used for special occasions to store valuable items during that time. Egyptians they fought many costly wars to restore the area of the east of the Mediterranean. In the 900s BC, the Libyans conquered Egypt. And then after the Libyans, a group of people known as Kush, they ruled or they took power. Finally, in 670 BC, after the Libyans and Kush, Egypt was taken over by the Assyrians from Mesopotamia. This is where we're stopping for today. Today's lesson, which is the New Kingdom, involves a lot of details and a lot of rulers and a lot of accomplishments and activities. So please write them down on your timeline of the New Kingdom before we start our new lesson next week. Now, this lesson marks the end of term 2, and starting next week, we will continue with chapter 5, section 4, but it will be considered as the first lesson in term 3. Thank you for listening.